I told a fictional urban legend story, and it came true. They say truth is stranger than fiction. But what happens when your fiction is the truth? I write scary stories for a living. It's my job to make up monsters and dream up ghosts to give people a good scare. But I never, ever thought one of my stories would lead to a detective showing up at my door. He was holding a cold case file that read just like my latest post. A week ago, I wrote about a ghostly hitchhiker. Now, a detective is telling me my made-up details are identical to a real disappearance. And they think I'm either a witness or a suspect. Welcome to Sleepy Echoes Unwind, where the night remembers old stories. Light your lanterns, slow your breathing, and let us drift together into the hush of the night. Chapter 1. The story I wrote. Before we get to that knock on the door that completely flipped my life upside down, you need to understand the story I wrote. It's important. Every single word, every detail. It all matters now in a way I couldn't have possibly imagined. Like a lot of writers, I get inspiration from all over the place. For this story, I wanted to do my own version of a classic, The Vanishing Hitchhiker. It's a tale as old as lonely roads, one we've all heard. A driver, a dark night, a mysterious figure on the side of the road. You know how it goes. The figure, usually a young woman, gets in the car and then just disappears from a moving vehicle, leaving the driver terrified and questioning their sanity. It's a classic for a reason. It taps into that fear of being alone and the unknown. I wanted to make my version feel different, more personal. I didn't want to just retell the same old story. I needed an atmosphere so thick you could almost taste the damp night air. So, I invented a place. Blackwood Creek Road. A name I just pulled out of thin air. I pictured this winding, two-lane road, choked on both sides by these ancient, gnarled trees that just swallow the moonlight. A place that felt totally forgotten. My main character was a tired salesman, Arthur, driving home late after a business trip went bust. The fog is rolling in thick, and he can barely see a few feet past his headlights. And that's when he sees her. I called her Ilera. She was just standing at the edge of the woods, caught in the glow of his high beams. I described her pretty clearly. She was wearing a simple, almost timeless white dress that seemed to float around her. It was way too thin for the cold night, a detail I put in to be unsettling. Her blonde hair was damp, clinging to her face like she'd been walking in the mist for hours. She wasn't trying to thumb a ride, she was just standing there, watching him get closer. Arthur, going against his better judgment, pulls over. The silence in the car after she gets in is, as I wrote it, deafening. He asks her where she's going, but she doesn't really answer. She just whispers an address that sounds like a jumble of words. 1412 Willow's End. Then she points a pale, skinny finger down the dark road and says, "It's just past the old iron gates." So Arthur drives. He tries making small talk, but her answers are short and cryptic. The air in the car gets cold. A classic trope, I know, but I couldn't resist. He can feel the chill seeping into his bones. He glances over, and Ilera is shivering, her lips looking a little blue. Feeling sorry for her, he says he's going to turn up the heat, but as he reaches for the knob, she puts a hand on his arm. Her touch is like ice. "It's all right," she whispers, her voice barely there. "We're almost there." And up ahead, through the fog, he sees them. Tall, rusted iron gates between two stone pillars. They lead into what looks like an old, overgrown cemetery. The landmark she mentioned. Arthur slows down, trying to see a house, any sign of 1412 Willow's End. He turns to ask her where to go next. In the passenger seat, is empty. She's gone. Just vanished. The doors are still locked. The seatbelt is still buckled. The car never stopped moving. Panic starts to set in. Arthur slams on the brakes, his heart hammering in his chest. He gets out of the car, yelling her name into the fog, but only the wind answers him. He looks back in the car, trying to talk himself down, to convince himself he just imagined the whole thing. And that's when he sees it. The final, chilling detail I added to make the story stick. Lying on the passenger seat, gleaming in the dashboard light, is a small silver locket. He hadn't seen her wearing one. He picks it up. It's cold, impossibly cold. On the front, there's a delicate engraving, a single weeping willow tree. He opens it. It's empty. And that's where the story ended. A classic ghost story with my own little spin. I was proud of it. The weeping willow locket, I thought, was a really nice poetic touch. I posted it online, watched the likes come in, and then I just moved on. I didn't think about Ilara or Blackwood Creek Road again. Until last Tuesday. Chapter 2. The knock on the door. It was a little after 10 in the morning. I was in my home office, which is really just the corner of my living room, trying to come up with a new story idea. I was thinking about a haunted lighthouse or something when I heard the knock. It wasn't a friendly knock, not a delivery. It was firm, official, 2 sharp raps. I opened the door to a man who looked like he was carved out of granite. He was probably in his late 50s, with a tired face, a graying mustache, and eyes that looked like they'd seen way too much. He was wearing a plain suit that didn't do much to hide the weight he was carrying on his shoulders. "Are you the author of this?" he asked, his voice low and gravelly. He wasn't holding a book. He was holding up his phone, with my story about Ilara on the screen. I was completely thrown. Yeah, that's me. I write horror stories online." I tried a weak smile. "Is there a problem?" He didn't smile back. "I'm Detective Miles," he said, flashing a badge so fast I barely saw it. "Philadelphia Homicide. I need to ask you some questions about your story. Can I come in?" My mind was just racing. Homicide? Why would a homicide detective care about my fictional story? Was this a prank? I stepped aside, a knot of confusion and anxiety twisting in my stomach. He walked right past me into the middle of my living room, his eyes scanning my messy desk, my bookshelves full of horror novels. My life. "Look, officer." "Detective," I corrected myself. "I really don't know what this is about. That story is fiction. I made it all up." He turned to me, and the look in his eyes was just chilling. It wasn't accusatory, not yet. Just a deep, unnerving exhaustion. "That's what I need to talk to you about," he said slowly. "Because the story you made up has details from a 10-year-old cold case. Details that were never released to the public. Details that only a handful of people on the planet should know." I just stared at him. The city noise outside my window just seemed to fade away. Cold case. Never made public. The words just echoed in the terrifying silence of the room. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick, worn-out manila folder. The words stamped on the front in faded red ink made the breath catch in my throat. Vance, Amelia, homicide, cold case. "We need to talk," Detective Miles said, his voice leaving no room to argue. "We need to talk about where you really got the idea for your story." Chapter 3. The Unraveling. We sat at my small dining table, and that folder sat between us like a bomb. The air was thick. My shock was fading, and this creeping, crawling dread was taking its place. This had to be a mistake, some kind of bizarre, nightmarish coincidence. "I don't understand," I said, my voice shaking.
swear to you, I made that all up. The name of the road, the girl, the details. It was all just for the story.
Detective Miles just watched me for a second, his face unreadable. Then he opened the folder. The first thing he slid across the table was a map, a topographical map of a rural area just outside the city. He tapped a thin, winding line with his finger. "This is Blackwood Creek Road," he said. My blood ran cold. It's a real place. Mostly an old service road now. People barely use it. 10 years ago, a 21-year-old woman named Amelia Vance disappeared after her car broke down out there. We never saw her again. I stared at the name on the map. Blackwood Creek Road. It couldn't be. I invented that name. I remember doing it. I put Blackwood and Creek together because one sounded ominous and the other sounded rural. It came from my imagination, didn't it? My mind was scrambling, trying to find a logical reason. Had I seen it on a map years ago and forgotten? Read it in some old news story? It had to be that. It was the only thing that made any sense. That's a crazy coincidence, I stammered. The detective's eyes narrowed just a little. It gets crazier. He slid a photograph across the table, a driver's license photo, a smiling young woman with bright eyes and long blonde hair. Amelia Vance. My breath hitched. She looked familiar. Not like I knew her, but like the picture of Alara I'd had in my head while I was writing. The same cheekbones, the same shape of her eyes. "This is Amelia Vance," he said. She was last seen wearing a white dress. She was on her way home from a friend's wedding. A white dress. Just like Alara. The coincidences were starting to pile up, forming this weight that was pressing down on me, making it hard to breathe. "Okay," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "So, a blonde girl in a white dress on a road with a similar name. There are tons of vanishing hitchhiker stories like that. The legend of Resurrection Mary in Chicago is a famous one. A blonde in a party dress who disappears near a cemetery. I was just using common folklore." Detective Miles didn't seem impressed. He just leaned forward. "Her friends, her family. They had a nickname for her from when she was a kid. It was never public knowledge. They called her Alara." And that was the moment the floor just dropped out from under me. Alara. It was a name I'd loved for years. One I kept in a notebook for a future character. It meant starlight. It felt poetic, ethereal, perfect for a ghost. It wasn't a nickname I'd ever heard. It was my name, my creation. "No," I whispered. "No, that's impossible." My mind was just a tornado of denial and panic. How? How could I have known that? This was way beyond coincidence. This was something else. Something terrifying. I started babbling, just throwing theories out there. Cryptomnesia? Did I overhear a conversation somewhere? Read some obscure forum post about the case years ago and just totally forgot about it? The detective listened patiently, his face never changing. When I finally stopped, he slid another document out of the folder, a copy of the original missing persons report. He pointed to a line under Last Known Destination. "Amelia called her sister from her car after it stalled," he said. "She was disoriented, didn't know exactly where she was. She tried to describe a landmark she could see in the distance. She told her sister it looked like some old iron gates, maybe for a farm or a cemetery." Old iron gates, just like in my story, right before Alara vanished. "And the address your character gave," he continued, his voice dropping lower. 1412 Willow's End. "It's not a real address, you're right, but Amelia Vance's car was found abandoned about a quarter mile from an old cemetery. It's called Willow Creek Cemetery. It has a willow tree design on its rusted gates. I felt sick. Every detail he laid out was another thread pulling my fictional world and this real-life tragedy closer and closer until I couldn't tell them apart. I felt like I was losing my mind. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice cracking. "What do you think I am? Some kind of psychic?" For the first time, something new crossed his face. It wasn't pity. It was suspicion, sharp and cold. "I don't believe in psychics," he said. "I believe in facts. And the facts are, you wrote a highly detailed, step-by-step account of what might have been Amelia Vance's final moments. You included a real place, the victim's description, a private nickname, and key landmarks. These are things you should not know." He leaned back, locking his eyes on mine. "So I have to ask myself, how? There are two options. Either you're a witness who repressed a memory for 10 years and it's now bubbling up as fiction, or you were involved." Involved. The word just hung there, heavy and suffocating. He thought I could be a killer, a murderer who was confessing through my writing. My whole world just tilted. "I was a teenager when she disappeared," I pleaded. "I lived in a different state. I have no connection to any of this." "We'll check on that," he said flatly. "But there's one more thing. One final coincidence that I just can't get past." Chapter 4. The Climax. He reached back into the folder. My eyes were glued to his hand, to the slow, deliberate way he pulled out a single plastic evidence bag. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. He placed the bag on the table. Inside it, tarnished with age but still unmistakable, was a small silver locket. Time just stopped. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could do was stare at it. It was exactly as I had imagined, exactly as I had written. On its delicate surface, I could just make out the faint, intricate lines of an engraving. A single weeping willow tree. This was found clutched in the victim's hand when her body was discovered months later, miles from her car. Detective Miles said, his voice a low, dangerous hum. Her family had never seen it. It wasn't hers. We believe it belonged to her killer. It was the one piece of evidence we had, and it was never, ever mentioned to the press or in any report. It was the one detail we held back. He paused, letting the full weight of his words just crush me. No one outside of the original investigators and the killer should know this locket exists. So tell me, he leaned in, his eyes boring into mine. How did you know? I had no answer. There was no answer. My mind was just a blank white space of pure terror. The story I had written, the little detail I had been so proud of, the poetic touch I'd added to give my readers a shiver. It wasn't fiction. It was real. And it was in an evidence bag on my dining room table. The detective stood up. The sound of the chair scraping the floor was deafening in the silent room. I'm going to need you to come down to the station. We need a formal statement. It wasn't a request. And I'd advise you not to leave town. You are now a person of interest in the murder of Amelia Vance. The conclusion. He's gone. The detective left about an hour ago. And I don't even know what I am. A witness? A suspect? Some kind of channel for something I can't explain? I keep looking at the spot on the table where he put that bag. The locket. My locket. But it isn't mine. I have never seen it before in my life, and yet I described it perfectly. I write scary stories. I deal in the unsettling and the unexplained. but it's always been from the safety of my keyboard. It's always been pretend. Now, the line between my stories and my reality hasn't just blurred, it's gone. It's completely vanished. How is this possible? Did I somehow tap into something? Did the ghost of Amelia Vance whisper her story to me? Or is there a darker, more rational explanation waiting for me? An explanation that proves I'm not just a writer, but a monster who forgot what he did. I honestly don't know which one scares me more. Have you ever had a thought, a dream, a story that felt a little too real? Let me know in the comments. Seriously, what would you do if you were me? I guess I'll keep you updated. I have a feeling this story is far from over.